Ni hao. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we can just take our seats, we'll get started. Okay, so once again, ni hao. Welcome back to session 2 from Automotive Logistics 2016. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christopher Ludwig. I'm the editor of Automotive Logistics, the group of magazines and publications, working closely with Louis, of course. And I'm, of course, very glad to be back in China and here in Chengdu with all of you for the first time. I think session 1 was a really interesting session. It gave us a comprehensive overview of the macroeconomic developments that we see in China and the automotive market, which is, of course, still growing. It doesn't mean that there aren't some risks or some needs for perhaps further reforms from both the government side and financing, as we heard, but certainly there's many opportunities out there for logistics, and particularly for higher value logistics services. Of course, we also heard a bit more specifically about the logistics connections here in Chengdu and Sichuan province, which I think is a good symbol for the growth and development of Western China and, of course, of the One Belt, One Road initiative. Of course, as many as you know, and you heard this morning, as far back as 2,000 years ago, Chengdu was an important trading hub as the starting point for the Southern Silk Road, connecting to the Middle East and Europe to the west, and to the southeast and Vietnam and Asia to the east. Some of those routes are today probably impassable, but the concept and idea of this network is really being revived and coming back to life. And some of the things we heard this morning about the 43321 initiative with the train links to Poland, and by the end of the year, Moscow and Istanbul really is quite a game changer for some of the logistics hubs here. And of course, if you just go kind of down the road to Chongqing, there's of course also important links there to Germany and to Europe. So again, the network that we're seeing develop here in Western China is significant, and its international links in particular are what's driving a lot of that. Which brings us nicely to our session here this morning, which is called Linking China to the rest of the world. Because of course the automotive supply chain is playing a really essential role in the development of many of these trade routes, and indeed has already for the last several decades. Whether it's the export of spare parts from China around the world, or the complex intercontinental production supply chains with parts originating in Europe, in America, in East Asia, South Korea, Japan, and of course moved all across the supply clusters of China. There is a high demand for transparent, quality, and reliable logistics services. And I think even as we see the fantastic development of the local supply base in China, the links to the rest of the world are becoming as important, if not more, especially as technology advances. So whether it's trade with Germany, with Sweden, with the US, and indeed with other Asian neighbors, these links are becoming more and more important. And that's what this session is going to go some way towards exploring, talking about new trade routes, whether it's, again, the Eurasian rail links that we started to hear about, and I think we'll hear a bit more about in this session, or indeed more traditional and important services such as deep sea transport and other links across China. We've got and I think one important thing that I would just add to these services, which perhaps are quite important, is they are very value-added led. They require door-to-door management, integration of many different companies, different legs, a lot of complexities that go into this. So it's partly what makes it such an interesting proposition for both the customers and the logistics providers who are in the room here today. And so in that note, we have put together a great panel here to discuss. We're going to have 3 presentations, and we're also joined on the panel by Volvo Cars. So I'll just introduce the panel to you. We're first going to hear from David Zhang, who's the Director of Integrated Supply Chain for Asia Pacific at Delphi, which is, of course, a very important tier supplier. Joining us as a panelist who will give some thoughts after the rest of the presentation is Magnus Ödling, Director of Inbound Logistics for Asia Pacific and China for Volvo Cars. We're also pleased to have with us Sharon Gray, Global Director of Automotive Key Accounts for Chep, Automotive and Industrial, a very important international packaging company. And then we'll have a dual presentation from GEFCO. We're joined by Andrew Liao, Sales Director for China of GEFCO, and Yves Suinat, the Network Sales Steering Director. So we'll have the presentations, and then we'll have plenty of time for some questions and answer at the end. So now I'd like to invite David Zhang to the stage.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, I think in the early section this morning, we have Mr. Chen talk about the One Belt, One Road. Also, we call it the New Silk Road. So from my perspective, this morning, I'm going to share from an enterprise standpoint, for Delphi, how we are utilizing that to serve the company. So just very briefly for myself, I'm David Zhang. I'm the Integrated Supply Chain Director for Asia Pacific. Okay, so yeah, so here's the agenda. I think I will quickly, go through the profile of Delphi. So Delphi has been evolved, the last couple of years because, we have, some dramatic change on our product portfolio. So I will take this opportunity to give, the team here a quick update. And then, from an economy standpoint, I think this morning we have Mr. Shen and also Mr. Chai talk about, the economy challenge that we are facing here in China. So I'm going to, talk more specifically from a supply chain standpoint, especially for automotive. How does that, impact our supply chain? And then, we mentioned about the Silk Road. I think from policy standpoint, Mr. Chen this morning had already gave a lot of details, so I will probably just, skip that portion. And then finally is the Delphi case study.
To move and be moved is what drives us. To rev motors, imaginations, and everyday lives. From innovations that entertain and keep us safe, to powertrain systems that inspire the scenic route. Our robust product and service solutions are paving the way towards new standards of excellence. For better mileage and longer trips. For greener savings and a healthier planet. Fueled by determination, collaboration, and technological grace.
Okay, thank you. So from a product standpoint, I think Delphi, has emerged. Previously we have a lot of product lines. So now I think we change more to, we call it safe, green, and connected. So from a sales number standpoint, you see globally for year 2015, our sales revenue is only $15 billion. That's the major reason was because that we spin off the thermal business. And we acquired Hellman Titan, but we did not have their sales number in year 2015. But when you look at it from a country standpoint, China, so for China itself, it's 3.1 billion, so it accounts for 20% of the global sales revenue. And then when you look at from China's standpoint, the growth, so if you can see, the red dots actually represents the new plants that we built after year 2010. So you can see, we have a new plant in Chengdu, a new plant in Chongqing, And also, you see the red dots are more towards the interior. I think that is also in line with the government strategies to promote the economy in interior city. And in meantime, we have the one belt, one road policy to support from a logistics standpoint. Okay, so the current economy challenge. So we will see from a car population penetration standpoint. So China compared with the developing country, right? So we are running at 89 or 90 per 1,000 people. So compared with Japan and US, so it looks like we are still having a lot of growth opportunity. However, when you look at the bar chart to the right, so the growth rate for the future years is not going to be as good as before. I think Mr. Shen talked about that this morning. So when you look at the historical trend, tells us when you look at from year 2014, so the CAGR is about 15% year over year, while after year 2014 to year 2018, so this is a statistic from PwC. So the CAGR is going to be only at 6%. So I think Mr. Shen mentioned this morning, so Q1, the sales growth for year 2016 is actually only about 6%. That is also with the consumer tax stimulation from a government standpoint. So this is going to be a challenge from a supply chain standpoint because with a lower growth, how to maintain the same profitability. And then, from a OEM, because OEM is definitely, as a tier one, they are my customers. So when we look at from an OEM standpoint, actually the added capacity that they have, again, so that is in line also with the Delphi manufacturing footprint. So actually that is also the major driver why we built plants in the interior cities, because when you look at the OEMs, they are also expanding into the interior city. So from a supply chain standpoint, again, that means longer supply chain, longer transit time, and also, from a cost standpoint, it's higher logistics cost. So the third element that I want to mention, so this is not about the economy, it's more about the contents of the car. So I think when you look at the picture here, so for a standard car now, GPS is it's already a basic element that to have, and then you see you have so many buttons under the navigation. That means for every button, that means for a supplier, that means a different specification or additional component. So that means more SKUs to manage. So it is adding challenge from a supply chain inventory management standpoint. And lastly, I think this is good and bad. So, from Delphi standpoint, we provide products to basically all the major OEMs in China. I think, from China standpoint, compared with Japan, Korea, so this is actually exciting because we have so many different OEMs in the country. But while from a supply chain standpoint, that means a lot of different specifications to manage. Again, it's an added challenge from a supply chain standpoint. Okay, I think this morning Mr. Chen covered the one belt, one road policy, in a lot of details. So I don't want to mention that. But just after Mr. Xi published this policy, I think from a volume standpoint, I think because the trend line or the route was in place already many years ago, but only start from the last 2 years. So we see a lot of volume changes. And then, from Delphi standpoint now, we are able to utilize this to support our manufacturing. So here is a live example. Okay, so this is shows what is the supply chain that we have from our Europe supply base into China. So you can see, we have a lot of suppliers in Europe because we have our customer Volvo here. So for Volvo car, we have a lot of components that we still have to buy from Europe. So the traditional sheet mode that we were using is air and ocean. So now actually we are having a new transportation mode that's chain. So when you look at it from a supply chain complexity standpoint, so I cannot read the number on the screen, but I think we have probably more than 2,000 pickup locations. So how to make sure that we can utilize the train service and meantime we can still balance the inventory and also the logistics cost, that's a challenge. So again, so we are launching a lot of new platforms every year. So actually the speed is always a concern. So that's why we have a lot of air shipment. But to put air shipment into rail, that means we need to have additional inventory. And also the response time is longer. So again, that's a challenge. But to put an ocean container into rail, it kills the logistics cost because I think rail, even though today the cost is already much lower than compared to a couple years ago, but still, it's 2 or 3 times more expensive than compared to traditional ocean freight. So I think the logistics team came up with a very innovative approach. So we do a hybrid solution. So we put air and ocean. So with the solid demand, so we consolidate those suppliers together and put it into the rail. So as a result of this, so we could save logistics cost by 20%. And meantime, from a cash flow standpoint, because we are utilizing the shorter transit time using railway, so we were able to reduce the inventory by 1%. Again, because of the design of this routing and also the different ascent pickup from the supplier, and also when you look at it from an OTD performance standpoint, the variation, because for ocean container, besides the longer transit time, so the variation is also high. So this one, the variation for transit time goes down from 5 to 2. Okay, so with that, I want to just summarize. So again, so from Delphi standpoint, we are a leading automotive supplier that relies on China market dramatically, and also the new trend is that from the supply chain standpoint, the complexity is increasing, but we believe so the quicker adapter can be the final winner. So that's why from Delphi standpoint, we want to be like the pioneer to start using the government policies or say utilizing the government policy that to serve the company to improve our profitability. So that's it from me for this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I think that was a pretty much perfect example of the kind of complexity and development that we're seeing in China, whether it's the result of spreading geographically across the country in the West, higher product complexity, more part numbers, an international supply chain, and there we saw also some innovative solutions as well, including the rail link and what that can mean for a tier supplier. We'll return to some of that during the Q&A, but next up, I'd like to invite Sharon Gray from Chep.
Ni hao. Hello. Really happy to be here today. It's amazing every time I come to China how drastically things change. And what I noticed the last couple of weeks was just how many cars there are on the road. So linking China to the rest of the world. Why do we want to link China? Obviously, China is the highest producer of automobiles. Not only that, but also the largest user of vehicles. So of course, everybody wants to be here. But if you look at the comparison there between assembly and sales around the world, you'll see that China is pretty even. The rest of the world, there's some disparity there. The forecast by PwC for 2022 is that they expect it to level out around the rest of the globe, which basically means that it's good news for finished vehicle logistics. And for the rest of us, certainly there's going to be a lot of parts moving around the world. So connecting with China, there's really three major inbound supply chain flows in China. You have your tier-to-tier flows, right? China domestic flows. Then you've got the regional flows connecting China to Asia. And then you have the global flows connecting China to the rest of the world. The thing about China that's really important too, though, is it's complex. Just to ship, freight in China domestically is complex. I looked up what a mega city was, and it said any city with population of over 10 million. So then I looked at the list of cities in China that are over 10 million, and I don't even want to put a number down, but because probably from the time that poll was taken to today, that's changed already. But obviously there's multiple mega cities in China, and that adds complexity. So when we're talking about packaging and we're talking about linking China to the rest of the world, there's standard modes of operation and standard modes of transport that are used. The main three being road, rail, and sea freight. Now you'll notice that air freight isn't listed there because that's not considered standard air freight or standard transportation. So we know that there's a lot of air freight that moves around, and we know that that adds incredible cost to the supply chain. But just even the three different modes of transport, that adds complexity all in itself. So then if you look what's inside of that transportation, you see the multiple different types of packaging that we have, and that further adds to the complexity. If you take the various number of containers and boxes and different types of pallets, everything that's used to move freight, and you add that with the different modes of transport, you realize how important the packaging piece becomes. Why is it important? Well, first of all, packaging is not the cost of the box. It's so much more than that. So, of course, you have your initial capital outlay to buy the expendable packaging. But then you also have to think about all those other touch points along the way. So if you are using boxes, perhaps they aren't stacking very well in the trailer. And so you're losing that optimization for the transportation. Certainly, there might not be the best packing done in boxes, and so there could be damage that could be an additional cost to your supply chain. And anytime you have a repack operation, you're going to have additional costs. So anytime you're touching it or having excess handling, you're going to have additional costs. Certainly the space utilization is a concern. And then also, too, you have to get rid of that expendable packaging. You have to be able to have the labor and the costs that are associated with that, with getting rid of the expendable. So much more than just the box or just the packaging itself. It touches many more aspects. So we call this the total cost of ownership, because in order to really understand what your supply chain is and what the costs are, you have to look at all of these elements to be able to understand that. So let's look at a real example. So this was a real customer, and I'm certainly not going to name them, but a real customer, and they had showed us that the amount that they had budgeted to spend for packaging. So then after we got into the details a bit more, we saw that there was about 39% additional costs because of sub-optimization of the transportation. We looked at the damage rates that they were receiving, and it turned out that it was going to be another 13% of costs. We had the repack operation. We went and toured the repack operation and looked at it, and it came out to about another 15% of additional costs. We had the storage, and then certainly the removal of the expendables. So all totaled, 80% of their cost of packaging wasn't even budgeted. So if you extrapolate that number out over the number of supply chains or the number of products that you're moving, that can become a pretty big number really fast. So let me walk you through a practical example. And now this is a very, very simple one-way supply chain. We have one repack operation in the middle. So there's the initial cost for the packaging, initial cost for the boxes, right? The supplier has that. Well, if we're using boxes, there's probably the damage that could occur. There's the sub-optimization of transportation like I was talking about. And then there's going to be the repack operation at the warehouse, the storage of the freight. And then on the other side, you have the OEM, and they've purchased a reusable fleet, which is great, but there's still costs that could be hidden there. You have the container management team or the manpower that's associated with that. You have the maintenance that goes with owning your own fleet. And then also, when you're moving those empty reusable containers back, you're shipping a lot of air. So that's a high cost, the transportation piece. The repack operation again, and then the disposal of the cardboard, the labor costs that are associated with that. And then, of course, for that reusable fleet that the OEM might have, there's a life cycle that's associated with that. So at some point, that's going to have to be recycled as well. So if you look at that, and then you think about that this was just a simple supply chain, and there's all of these areas that have hidden costs, then imagine if you, have a consolidation or a deconsolidation, or you have a kitting strategy. Any more complexity that you add into the supply chain, there'll be more hidden costs. So how can we simplify this? We need to reduce the number of standards. So we're already working with multimodal transportation. We're working with a lot of bespoke or standard packaging. We need to reduce that number down. And how do we do that? I would suggest that maybe we look at it, instead of from the bottom up, looking at the part first, look at the container first. Because we currently do have one global standard that can be used across all modes of transportation, and that's the ISO C container. So no, it's not going to work for everything, but it does allow us to begin to share resources and to work together. So when you look at both the packaging and the transportation, I'm getting a bit of noise here. I don't know where that's coming from. Thank you. So we need to reduce the number of standards. So when we talk about sharing resources and the sharing economy, pooling's been around for a long time. Chep's been in business for over 40 years with the pooling solution. And it's really a simple solution for a complex supply chain. So when you look at the diagram there, this is a very simple pooling solution. The supplier needs parts, so they contact Chep. Chep delivers the container, not parts, containers. Chep delivers the containers to them. They put their parts inside the container and they transport it to the OEM. The OEM uses those parts, and then when he's finished, the container's empty, contacts Chep. We pick up the containers. We maintain them, we get them ready for redistribution out into the pool. Very simple supply chain, very simple solution that we can put at complex supply chains. So imagine a seamless supply chain. So what I just talked about, the pooling solution, the beauty of that is that it can be domestic, it can be regional, or it can be global. So let's talk through another example. You know, think about pooling and linking China to the rest of the world. Let's say that there's a tier 2 supplier in Europe, and they are going to ship to a tier 1 supplier in Europe. So they put their parts in a container, a reusable container. They ship that to the tier 1 supplier. The tier 1 supplier takes those parts, modifies them, does what they need to do, puts them back in that same container, and ships them to a China OEM. The China OEM has a truck at the port. That same container is loaded off the truck, put onto that, or loaded onto the truck, and it's taken to the manufacturer's site, and it could be even taken line side. Now, is that ideal? Yes, but it can happen. But if and only if we do begin sharing resources and outsourcing those activities that aren't our core business. So there's been some talk this morning about the new Silk Road. And I mean, the new Silk Road is going to link China to the rest of the world, literally. So perhaps, you know, could pooling and standard containers be the catalyst for, you know, being able to take those pooling solutions and make that work globally within your supply chain? You know, the common denominator will be the sea container, and not just in China, but for the rest of the world as well. So what will help link China to the rest of the world? You know, we've talked about the complexities in China. We've talked about what we need to look at to really understand what the total cost of ownership or what all of those elements of packaging are. We have to be, I think bigger, think outside of our individual budgets, and be able to look at every way that supply chain is touched. So sustainable standard pooling solutions, you know, yes, they can reduce the complexity in your supply chain, they can improve the bottom line, and they absolutely can link China to the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So there we heard about some of the, again, the challenges and opportunities that come with returnable, with packaging and returnable packaging there. And we'll come back to more of that during the Q&A, I'm sure. Our final presentations before we move into the Q&A is going to be from GEFCO. So I'd like to invite our speakers to come to the stage now.
Okay, thank you for your welcome, especially to the Automotive Logistics team. It's a real pleasure and honor to introduce GEFCO here on the Automotive Logistics session here in Chengdu. Yes, we are going to introduce ourselves in just a couple of words. So Andrew Liao is here, is a sales and marketing manager for China. Personally, I'm responsible for the sales network into GEFCO organization. We will give you an overview upon who is GEFCO. Second, an overview upon the Chinese market. And second, we will illustrate our purpose with 3 success stories related to the experience we had on the Chinese to European markets since a couple of years now. So if you look at GEFCO at a glance, so GEFCO is, I would say, a nice and beautiful lady who has been about 60 years old. So we were born in the automotive industry in 1949. We were a 100% subsidiary of PSA Group, and we were used to manufacture products and organize lean management for the PSA Group. So we were born in manufacturing, processes, and quality and performance. So this is the DNA of GEFCO people. We are quite number in this company. It's a multicultural company, and that's why we will share this presentation with Andrew and myself, Andrew in Chinese and myself in English. So this is one of the key assets as well of GEFCO. The turnover that we delivered last year was about 4.1 billion euros. We expect for this year, 2016, 4.5. So we are aware about this huge challenge in the development of this business. And we are part of the top 10 logistics provider, especially in Europe. So, Andrew, please give an overview upon the China automotive market.
OK， 这是我们的对这个中国市场汽车市场的这个分析。
This is our analysis of the Chinese auto market. In 2015, the import volume was a little more than 1.1 million, mainly from Japan, United States, Germany, and UK. The export volume in 2015 was 750,000. The main export market was Iran, Vietnam, and South American countries like Chile and to some North African countries like Egypt and Algeria.
Of vision related to GEFCO service offers, it's quite simple. It's like a wall. You have a couple of bricks, and the concept and the organization of GEFCO is to build solutions for customers. We have what we call core freight, meaning basic activities such as overland transport, ocean freight, air freight, transport of vehicles, and warehousing capacities. But we are able to bring and build full solutions, and this is the DNA of our offers. We are able as well to duplicate and implement these solutions for various industries, such as electronics, automotive business, high and heavy equipments, and fast-moving consumer goods. And in order to develop these offers, we are working on specific gateways. So China has some gateways on the western clusters, on the eastern clusters, on the coasts. In Europe, you have clusters on the ports, the major ports in Europe, and otherwise as well for Southern America, where you have the privileged clusters where a lot of car or industrial manufacturers are settling down. In order to achieve performance, we rely on three key success factors. We heard here about a lot speaking about connectivity. In fact, connectivity is based on the performance of networks, on the way to speak to our customers and to work with our partners in order to achieve a full, reliable, and performance service. Second is based on the local knowledge. We do not do operation on the same way in Europe or in China or in South America because the customs aspects are highly different, and we have to deal with that in order to achieve the full service. And third point, which is key into logistics, is innovation. Innovation is how to build new solutions, to customize and tailor-made solution to customers in order to meet their needs and to give the good leverage for their sales on their network. In order to achieve that, GEFCO is working with an integrated network. So we are widespread on the 5 continents, and especially, as Andrew highlighted, related to the new business and the new markets that are rising. Northern Africa is one of the strategic markets for China, as well Iraq. We have settled a new branch 2 months ago. And for Iran, it will be in the making for early 2007. Basically, we are just waiting for the compliance with the regulations in order to be in line with this new market. So if I have a look at the major markets where we are addressing, so Europe, yes, is the first one because we are born on this market. but as well the Central Europe and Northern Africa are highly developing markets, and as well the number of cars is growing on this new market. This famous map, everybody's going to know it, I guess, at the end of this day, because everybody's looking at the fishbone with all opportunities to develop and link Europe to China. One part of our assets is that we have as shareholder the Russian railways, now 75%, and PSA is still 25%. So it gives us a good asset in order to combine the Russian railways transport to each local operator, because it's what we have to think about. It's the combination of service on one side, but as well it's a combination of operators. And in order to achieve this combination of operators, it's clear that as these are state-owned companies, these are monopolies, they have to work together and agree together. It's not just a question of gauge, so between the railways, it's as well political agreements. So that's why it's part of the engine in order to operate the Silk Road. Andrew, please, for China.
Thank you. 那么我来介绍这个中国部分。那么在
I'm going to cover the China part. Before I tell you something about the GEFCO China, I'm going to share with you some of the needs and expectations from our customers. Many of my clients told me that they were quite interested in the cost control capability and reliability of their logistic partners. Because for our customers and clients, they have their cost containment target, cost optimization target, as well as the process optimization parameter. So what can we do for you in China? GEFCO established a representative office in Beijing in 1995. In 2008, we upgrade the representative office to a wholly foreign-owned company. In China, we have registered 4 operating entities across 11 cities in China. We have joint ventures, wholly foreign-owned companies and subsidiary companies. The GEFCO China is headquartered in Shanghai. We have a GEFCO Hong Kong, and together with a Dongfeng Auto, we established a joint venture in Wuhan. We provide auto logistics service to Dongfeng Shenlong Auto manufacturing companies. And together with Mingsheng, we set up a joint venture to provide logistics services to Citroën. So far in China, we have 1,350 associates. So what is the core products we can provide for the development of the Silk Road strategies? We now can connect China to Russia, to Middle Asian countries, and to Europe, East Europe, Mid Europe, and Western European countries. Also, we can also extend that route to connect South Korea and Japan. We provide new solutions for international, transnational transportation. One of our stakeholder is the National Railway Company in Russia. We have more than 60 years of experience in railroad operation. We have more than 200 operation sites across the world. To support our transportation service, we provide door-to-door transportation solutions from Europe to China. The yellow dots represent GEFCO's business presence along the Silk Road. I think you're quite familiar with this charter. Many of our customers and government agencies have this similar charter. Chengdu, Chongqing, Wuhan, Zhengzhou, Xi'an, Beijing, Tianjin, Dalian, Xi'an, Harbin. We can start the transportation from this city to our goals in Kazakhstan and Manchuria.
Through the railways in Europe, we can cover the Central Asian countries up until Almaty and Pakistan and Uzbekistan. We can also go further to Moscow before we finally reach Duisburg and Hamburg for the regional transportation connection in Europe. So currently we provide transportation for normal cargoes or non-hazardous materials transportation, also including finished vehicles and components. So I will shift it back to my colleague for the customs clearance.
Yes, we wanted to highlight this point related to customs expertise because it's not only making 8,000 kilometers by railways. We are crossing between 3 to 5 or 6 number of borders, and I spoke about the different railway operators throughout the line haul. So we have to be compliant as well with the customs procedures. And part of our expertise is linked to these customs procedures. On the Europe to China flows and China to Europe flows, on both sides, we have to make the translation of documents to be compliant with each local regulation, and it's part of the job to engineer the full shipping of parts, industrial components, or cars by themselves.
然后我继续讲解一下我们的这个。
We'll continue with the Silk Road solution, which is also our key topic. We provide a multimodal solution for multi-products from Europe to China or vice versa. Currently, we provide CBU or two-wheelers. And also, we provide parts and general cargoes. For example, from Germany or Europe, we have finished vehicles to China. Then, first of all, we pick up products from a German factory before we reach the train station in Duisburg. 15 days of transportation before reaching Chongqing station, and unpackaging and customs clearance. We can put the cars in the bonded area before it is further redistributed to the western parts of China. I want to give you 2 case studies. First of all, case export, car export, which is the heavy trucks to Europe through Kazakhstan. Finally, the cars find their way to Belarus. The time of transportation is around 20 days. This is the imports of cars. We provide container loading in Germany and delivery of the container dropping off in the southwest China. The routing is from Germany to Poland, further to Belarus, Russia, and China. So the scope of services including pre-carriage plant to Duisburg, and these are BMW cars you can see. Also you can see the vehicle stuffing, custom documentation, including declaration, transit, and clearance, before rail transport, tracking and tracing, and also the final deliverance to the dealers. So these are all the traditional and the typical scopes of our services. So far, we have transported around 80 cars. The damage rate is 0%. This is the comparison between rail and ocean. So the traditional method will spend about 65 days. And also, you know, ocean is not that stable, but rail, only about 25 to 27 days is enough from door to door. And it will further lower the cost for the last mile delivery, especially in the west of China. And also, some of the speakers before me have mentioned about the reduction of inventory cost. This is also the advantage of a rail transport. Because of less time taken, so it can also save a lot of working capital and cash input. In the future, when we have more trains, then it will seek further reducing the cost. These are the loading methods by racks. So one container can take about 3 to 4 vehicles. Through this BB, we can ensure safety. It can accommodate about 4 vehicles. The loading factor is about 4. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to have the opportunity to introduce our Chinese team with Laurent Sick, who is our general manager. Please, Laurent, stand up. Anders Fan, who is in charge of business development in Asia. Sylvia Zhao, who is in charge of sales and marketing with Andrew. And Alice, who is in charge of the Silk Road implementation as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, in fact, to all of our panelists for their presentations. And again, we saw more examples there of what type of solutions there are on the Silk Road and what that would mean for this region and for Chinese automotive logistics. Before we open it up, I'd like to, because we haven't heard from one of our panelists so far, and that's, of course, Magnus from Volvo. Volvo, of course, almost something of a native son here in Chengdu with an important factory. Magnus, I thought perhaps you can reflect a little bit, talking a little bit perhaps about what connecting China to the rest of the world would mean for Volvo in terms of its international supply chain, whether that's connecting from Europe through the traditional methods, or if there's some Silk Road options that you've also looked at, perhaps.
Of course. Hello, everybody, and it's good to be here in Chengdu, which is somehow the home of Volvo cars in China, with our first factory that went live in 2013 and which is fully up and running by now. Of course, I'm in the head office in Shanghai, but still coming to Chengdu is very natural for us. Now to your question, Christopher. Connecting to the world, so import, of course, starting up a new plant. In the first stage, we had a lot of import per vehicle, and then localization has been a very big focus for R&D and for purchasing. So actually, that is about not linking it to the world, because we want to source locally where we produce, and we want to sell where we produce. That said, we will still have a big share of our volume coming from Europe and rest of the world. And we're also looking to increase the sourcing in Asia Pacific, as we are now officially a region also out of Shanghai head office. For export, last year I talked briefly about Volvo being the first premium manufacturer to export cars out of China. And 1 year later, we can say it's been a big success to the US. And I actually missed that in the statistics from GEFCO, our export to US. So we can include that next year maybe. It's actually a couple of thousand cars, but growing. And we continue to have high ambitions for export of finished vehicles to the US, to Asia Pacific countries, but maybe also beyond that in the future. So for us, it's certainly connecting for both import and export, which sets high pressure on customs, which people said. For things that we're going to export, we don't want to pay import duties and vice versa in the Europe region, for example. As you said, traditional way of coming to Chengdu would be sea freight or air freight, and during last year we also started up using the rail connections that are being more and more household, and we heard them last year, we hear them this year, and so far at Volvo Cars we use it not as a structural transport mode, but as a need for speeding up, because in a very long supply chain from Europe to China, things happen both on the supply and the demand side.
Okay. And obviously, I'm sure all of you read it. If not, you can go back and see it. Magnus and I spoke last year about a quite important project that Volvo has been doing here in China with, for its inbound logistics in terms of running some tenders and perhaps some re-engineering. And I wondered if you might be able to give us a little bit of an update on that project, perhaps particularly the international side, because I know that was an important piece of the project.
Yes, so that project has been running since August last year in full speed, and we're about to go live this summer. And it's been very hectic process, but very exciting process to get to know the, for me personally and for my team and for Volvo Cars, to know the greater market for international and domestic inbound transportation to our plants in China, which then is Chengdu, of course, but our new plant in Daqing and our engine plant in Changyakou. And we are, as I said, going live this summer. New organization, new transport management system, new processes, new carriers, a portfolio of carriers, a mix of global players, regional players, and domestic Chinese players across all modes of transport. So quite busy days, but I'm happy to be here anyway.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that. I'd like to invite any questions we might have from the audience. As usual, we'll have a microphone going around, and you can ask your question in English or in Mandarin. Do we have any questions from the floor? Sorry, it's a little bright for me to see, so sorry if I miss you. You won't get to lunch sooner by not asking questions, because I've got a whole page of them here, so I'm sorry to disappoint you on that front. I wanted to ask generally for the panel, well, David, first, perhaps starting with you, because you first brought up the rail solution, which I believe is fairly new for Delphi. So can you give us a sense, first of all, of the volume and how often, how much volume is moving it? Is it a regular mode? Is it an alternative kind of expedited mode? And also a little bit about the effectiveness and reliability of the mode.
Yeah, so now I think the plan is that from this year we are going to do, including Shanghai, Chongqing, Chengdu. But today I think currently the up and running rail service that we are using actively is from Europe into Chongqing, because our volume in Chongqing plant is relatively high compared with Chengdu. And from a frequency standpoint, I think we have weekly container, and this is a normal ship mode, as explained in the early presentation. So we combine some of the default air shipment as well as the ocean shipment. So we make those a stable volume supplier and then put it into the rail container. So again, weekly frequency, but we call that a normal shipment. It's not, as a Magnus, you use that for premium, right? So for us, it's a normal shipment.
Mm. And I assume it's not a dedicated Delphi train, or is it combined across other suppliers?
It's a Delphi container, but it's shared with the other commodities, not necessarily only automotive. I think includes other commodities as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, it's for anyone to answer, but perhaps starting with GEFCO. We had a question this morning about the route during winter, for example, and some of the challenges that might be faced there. Since you have a little bit of a Russian in your DNA now, perhaps you can give us some sense of how reliable or what changes might be done during the service during the winter period, especially through the Russian winter.
Okay. In general, it's what we stated in the presentation. The lead times commitment, transit time commitments, as we said, it's a bracket, 15 to 17 days. Yes, winter conditions may have impact on the slowdown of trains or wagons. It's clear. But more of that, if we keep this bracket, the key aspect that have to be clearly understood by any carrier is the fact that we speak about block trains or commercial trains. Block trains, it means, yes, it's like a full truck, it's direct from point A to point B. So then you can go fast and you can reach such kind of transit time by 12, 13, 14, maybe some challenges by 9 days, we spoke about this morning, so why not? But we speak about block trains. So it means between 60 to 100 containers. It's led in fact by the number of platform wagons. So if a block train is driving directly from, let's say, a hub in China up to Duisburg or maybe Lodz in Poland, yes, we can reach such kind of transit time. But if it's commercial train, as you see, it's a fishbone, as I call that. It means that the commercial train may make a lot of stopovers. Containers will be dispatched depending on the various destinations, and then you may have some longer transit times. So winter and weather conditions may have an impact, but the most clear impact is mainly related to block trains or commercial trains.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think it was also raised this morning, perhaps just to clarify the gauge differences along the route to Europe. Is it, how many times is it having to switch? Is this also another handling point that adds potential dimension of risk or delay? The rail gauge, it's not consistent throughout the whole route, I assume?
You mean the switch from a hub or a border to another one, or
yeah, between China and Europe, for example. I'm just not familiar with the different gauges. How many different gauges are we dealing with here? Is that a challenge for the route?
Yes, it's quite well organized. So it means that you have the different gauge, and there is a transboarding operation of containers from the current train to the new one, and so the borders, such as in Brest-Litovsk or in Manzhouli, or so they are fully equipped in order to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions or comments from the audience? You're quiet this morning, I see. Question from my side. Oh, sorry, I missed it. Oh, sorry. Okay, over there.
Okay, a question from Ruud Vossenbelt, Inform. I saw from the GEFCO presentation that you are carrying cars in a covered rail wagon. I was wondering, are you also considering open rail wagons for vehicle logistics?
Sorry, the last sentence, please. Can you explain?
Are you also looking to open rail wagons to carry vehicles?
Vehicles?
I think he...
Okay.
Yeah.
Open wagons to carry vehicles?
Yes.
Open wagons is not as safe as the container one. So at this stage, we don't consider open wagons to carry vehicles.
There are two different visions. It's what is interesting. We visited the day before yesterday a big and famous car manufacturer in northeastern China, and we were looking at the wagons. And in China, wagons are completely closed. In Europe, they are mainly open wagons, so they are protected with some, I would say, bars or sorry, I don't find the word. So they are protected, but it's open air. In China, it's completely closed, so it's different way of process. But in fact, the content of a number of vehicles is exactly the same.
Okay, we have a question right in the back.
Yeah, Laurent Sick, GEFCO China. So just to reply to bring additional information regarding the previous question, open or closed wagons and so on. I would say that when I arrived in China, the first thing that I can discover for a truck transportation is open track or closed track or semi-closed tracks. It's exactly, in fact, the same mindset. We are a rail operator, integrator in Europe. We own more than 3,000 wagons in Europe. Open wagons, yes, because it could help moving the vehicles faster in a very big quantity, more than 200 vehicles with block train. This is as well, I do think that for the time being, as we are crossing many countries with two transshipments, one between Poland and the CIS countries and the second one in Alashanko. And that requires as well the infrastructure to make the solution more sustainable and more efficient in the future. But I do think that for the time being, yes, the continuous rack is the best solution because we optimized already the loading factor from 2 vehicles to 4 vehicles. Our goal is to optimize the flows in order to promote, in order to find the best solution for our customers. But in the future, I do believe as well, and like what we are doing in Europe, a possibility to use the blockchain, open one or semi-open, in order to move the vehicles faster and with higher efficiency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Magnus, if we could, you mentioned obviously about the project that will go live in August. Has this changed, obviously you mentioned there'll be a new carrier, but has this also changed other processes in speaking specifically about the international chain at the moment, whether it might be the ports or that you've used or the inland routes and connections or free trade areas or whatever, have you rethought through, has it been a kind of re-engineering, if you like, of the international supply chain for Volvo as well?
So if we talk about Europe to China, when we started back in 2013 to ship out parts to Chengdu, we consolidated everything in Ghent and shipped out of via Antwerp. As of this year, we will ship out of 2 locations in Europe through hubs or consolidation centers, and we will, by the end of the year, target to have between 5 and 7 direct shipments from part suppliers. Okay. So that of course has to do with our volume, so that grows. If we produce more cars, we have more parts from the bigger suppliers, but also to our new plant in Dacheng that we plan to do this as a strategy for anything that has more than, let's say, 1 40-foot container per week, which by the way allows us to look closer to that packaging solution for those individual flows, because then you don't mix it with other cargo, which is a complexity in itself.
Okay, so you are looking at potential returnable packaging options that you.
I wasn't saying that.
I'm sure Sharon will be asking about you after the session.
Packaging, Sharon needs to talk to my colleague, but in terms of my colleague's impact on the utilization of the container, which I'm paying for, then I have a big interest in it.
Right, I understand. Sharon, you mentioned obviously the need to reduce standards if we were going to use more returnable packaging. Would you say broadly that this is more of an issue in China than in perhaps elsewhere, that Chep is active, like North America or Europe?
Yeah, I think certainly, there's a lot of customized packaging out there. And I think what the shift will be is if we can go to more standard containers with then perhaps the customized dunnage inside, and
Right.
whether that can be pooled or not is, you know, to be determined. But certainly that at least allows the containers then to have the same footprint with the sea containers and the trucks and so forth.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the floor? Oh, sorry, I missed on the corner here.
Good morning. This question's for Sharon and Chep. Can you expand a little bit upon your presence in China and strategically, how do you see expanding with the OEMs in China in the market?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been in China for quite some time and have had a domestic business and a regional business for quite some time. We now are working on the global pooling solutions from China to Europe and to the U.S. Obviously, there's a lot of interest going that way. So what we've found is that we've done trials with people, we've done pack-outs, and it's successful. So we see that as being probably the largest growth area for Chep in the coming years.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question, perhaps starting with David and particularly and to Magnus about freight visibility, perhaps specifically on the international supply chain, since that's a little bit our focus right now. Do you, comparing perhaps the traditional methods like sea and air, also with the new rail, are there gaps? Where would you like to see improvements? Has this been a specific focus for Delphi and its providers, for example?
Okay, so from a visibility standpoint, I think currently from Delphi we have a plan that we probably is going to have a transportation management system globally, but again, that is a plan. So currently the visibility is through our R3PLs. Like for example, from Europe into Asia, so we're using Geodis Wilson. So we are utilizing their supply chain management system. So they provide us part number level visibility. That means no matter it's by air, by ocean, or intermodal, so we have visibility from the supply pickup until the final delivery to our plant.
And is it a different system to track on the rail that you're using?
Because for the current rail service, we are still using the same R3PL that is Geodis Wilson.
Yeah.
So we are using the same system.
Yeah, but there is plans, as you indicated, for Delphi to invest in its own.
Right, so going forward, because the challenge for Delphi is that because we are having several R3PLs, so we have to interface with different systems. So that also adds complexity from a visibility standpoint. Also, if you want to do some network optimization, so from a data standpoint, it is not always standard because every system has their own data structure. So again, we have a high-level plan, but we haven't implemented that in the region yet.
I see. And Magnus, you mentioned that obviously part of this project has been a TMS, which I know Volvo implemented already in Europe and for other global sites, so perhaps you can speak a little bit to the impacts for that.
Yeah, so we are slightly ahead of you, David, but still it is in the middle of being finished and being rolled out, and we've spent a lot of time and focus on making the TMS system functioning as well for intercontinental transports as for domestic transports. And of course, as David says, this allows us a flexibility to have everything in one view, in one system, to collect the data, to report on the data, and it gives us a flexibility also in the contracting strategy. What I would like to add is the importance of quality and timeliness of data. So that is a high focus on our 3PLs instead, because of course they need to send us the data. Many times they are dependent on upstream data from airlines or the actual rail line operator or the sea freight carriers, obviously. So that is a lot in our attention. So solving the technical part on our side, the EDI connection to our carriers, and then also helping them focus on their upstream data.
Okay, thank you for that. Any last questions from the audience? Yeah, we'll take that question right in the middle. If you just say your name and company, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from Chang'an Auto in Chongqing. I have a question for Sharon Gray, Madam Sharon Gray. In your introduction, you talked about the sharing of the package. So according to your calculation, to what extent can we improve the efficiency and reduce the cost in packaging? Do you have any success story in this regard? Thank you very much.
The question was from Chang'an in Chongqing, and it's to Sharon. I know you were a little slow getting your headset out there. So the question is the example, you showed some examples of sharing of the packaging. So according to your calculations, do you have any sense of what the savings might be? And do you have any examples that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, the numbers are running around 35% savings when you share resources and utilize the pooling. Basically, it kind of comes down to two, like what I was just saying earlier, like what type of internal dunnage do you have, what, all of those types of considerations are made as well. But from an overall industry perspective, the numbers are running at about 35%.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you to the panel for their presentations. Before we break, actually, our lunch is hosted by Beijing Chengdu CTC Logistics. So in a moment, I'm going to invite Dr. Chen Gang to the stage to welcome you to lunch. But I'd just like to thank our panel specifically for their great presentations and commentary. And so Chen Gang, who's the VP of Beijing Chengdu Logistics and CEO of CTC Logistics.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate the Automotive Logistics magazines for providing me with this great opportunity to show among us the very important information and experience in the auto logistics industry. As we understood that the auto logistics market is very huge in China, and there is more and more interconnectivity between China and the rest of the world. Innovation and collaboration is the common goal pursuing by all stakeholders. Changqiu Auto Logistics Company is probably the only auto logistics company that will be listed in Shanghai Stock Exchange. In 2015, we shipped a total of 2.8 million vehicles, and we operate a rail transportation from Manchuria till through United Kingdom. We also operate the rural vehicle transportation. We have 14 rural ships. We provide intermodal transportation services connecting sea transportation and road transportation as well as railroad transportation. Also, we provide logistics services for spare parts. Well, this is the first time we worked as a global partners to work with auto logistic magazines to support this conference. We do hope that we'll enjoy closer collaborations with automotive logistics in other 9 international conferences. We have already had a lot of collaborations with German companies. We hope to extend this collaboration with other companies. We're going to launch a super auto logistic platform in China. Probably it is an innovative solution. It covers spare parts to manufacturing, to sales, to after sales, and IT and everything. We simply try to integrate everything and put everything together so that we can provide real connectivity to all the stakeholders in this industry and help all the stakeholders reduce the cost and improve the efficiency. We have a stand outside, and welcome to visit our stand. Last but not least, thank you very much and enjoy the lunch.
much, Dr. Gang. I'd like you to all welcome you to lunch now. It's the room to your right as you exit the room here, and we will restart our third session at 2 o'clock. So thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.
Every year, the auto transportation industry wastes 75 billion, that's billion with a B, on inefficient transport of automobiles. And every year, 20 billion kilograms of needless CO2 is wasted by this